we're praying that, he pulls through this and he makes it through this, as we hope that he will.
Prayers this morning for Damar Hamlin. The Bills safety is in the hospital this morning, sedated and in critical condition after he collapsed on the field during last night's Monday Night Football game against the Bengals. He took a hard hit in the chest, and then the Bills say that he suffered a cardiac arrest. He actually stood up and then fell back down. With us to talk more about this is our 9 Health expert, Dr. Kohli, who is a cardiologist. Thank you for coming in. So a lot of people are talking about something called a commotio cordis. Everyone's talking about this. You think that this might have caused it?
It's hard to speculate in this particular situation, but it's very consistent. So the most common cause statistically of cardiac arrest in athletes, which means the heart just suddenly stopping, is an arrhythmia, which is an electrical disturbance of the heart. So for some reason, the electricity in the heart kind of freaks out, goes haywire. So commotio cordis, which has been described mostly in baseball and sports with high impact to the chest, is when you get a blunt trauma to the chest, and it occurs in the part of the cardiac cycle where the electricity is sort of resetting itself. So if you think about your computer, it's almost like it freezes at the wrong time, and that sends the electricity sort of haywire. So it's very possible that's what could have happened. When we're playing sports also, we have, our stress hormones are amped up. That can increase our risk for cardiac arrhythmias. We get electrolyte abnormalities because we're sweating a lot, we're running around. That can increase it. And in his particular case, I would really like to know if he has any underlying genetic or structural problem with his heart.
Yes.
I was just going to add a little bit more on that. I saw this graph which shows like the electrical, heart rhythm or whatever. And this is just like the tiniest little sliver where this can happen. And it has to be right when the force happens.
That's right. So, and in fact, it doesn't even have to necessarily be a trauma to the chest. So it's called an R on T phenomena. So once in a while, our heart kind of skips beats. Normally, the electricity goes top down, top down, top down. But if somebody scares you, for instance, your heart kind of startles for a second. So if you have an abnormal electrical activity, whether it's trauma to the chest or whether it's a skipped beat occurring right when that heart is resetting and getting ready for that next beat, the electricity kind of freaks out and almost like blows a fuse in the electrical system of the heart.
Dr. Kohli, I think one thing that made this so traumatic is that viewers and everybody there and the other players, they watched them give CPR to him for 10 minutes. A lot of people wondering why not take him to a hospital sooner? What was the reason that it needed to be done there on the field?
High quality CPR is the most life-saving intervention. And I think in his particular case, the fact that he collapsed on the field with lots of trained medical professionals around may be really, really prognostically beneficial for him. So the first thing you do before you move somebody, you restore their spontaneous circulation, because you have to make sure that the brain, the other organs are getting blood, and that's the goal of that CPR. You're pumping for the heart, essentially, moving that blood around the body while you reset the electricity. And that means medication. Sometimes you can use something called a defibrillator to reset that electricity. But you never move somebody when they're arrested without circulation, because that's when they're actually more unstable.
We were hearing that a former NFL doctor, he said there's like 24 doctors that are like on the field, right? So last night they did 10 to 15 minutes of CPR. They used a defibrillator. They were able to get the heartbeat back before they transferred in the ambulance. And I asked you, does that mean with that long of CPR that maybe brain function loss?
Not necessarily. The studies tell us that if you have return of spontaneous circulation, or ROSC as we like to call it, within 20 minutes, that's actually prognostically favorable, assuming you get high quality CPR. So the most important thing we're going to see in the next few days, guys, is his neurological recovery. Right now they have a medically induced coma because they're wanting to control his heart rate, his blood pressure, his breathing. But as they start to wean that sedation, how he wakes up and what his MRIs of his brain looks like are very important. But 10 minutes is not an unreasonable amount of time. In fact, the median duration of CPR for out-of-hospital cardiac arrest is about 12 minutes or so.
A lot of people are watching this, and we're probably not as lucky to be on a field surrounded by as many medical experts out there that can do that. Right now, the American Heart Association is really encouraging people to learn CPR. It can save lives. Unfortunately, we don't have the time to do a full-out tutorial, but where could we go to get some of those lessons?
You can go to the American Heart Association website. You can go to your local Red Cross. There's so many ways to learn CPR. And in fact, you know, a CPR can double or triple somebody's chances of survival with an out-of-hospital cardiac arrest, which has like a 90% fatality. So you can really be the difference between life and death for a family member or a friend or, you know, even a stranger. And now they've changed the CPR algorithm so that they have hands-only CPR for bystanders. So if you're nervous about giving somebody mouth-to-mouth during COVID or what have you, it's totally okay. Just get on that chest and start pounding. Push in hard and fast, 2 inches and 100 to 120 times a minute.
Yes.
Staying alive, right? Is that what you sing in your head?
Staying alive.
Yes.
Staying alive. Yep.
Well, and as you were saying, good CPR could be the big difference here. You know, there were all these doctors that went in there and they essentially not only got his heart going again, but they were getting that blood to the brain.
That's exactly right. So I think hopefully I'm really optimistic that he's that 10% or better, but the prognosis will depend on how long he was down, the quality of CPR that he gets, and what his heart looks like right now.
All right, well, a lot of questions definitely linger about this. Thank goodness we have you to help us at least break down some of them and get a better understanding, because a lot of people waking up this morning say, how on earth could this happen?
Yeah, so tough. Dr. Kohli, thank you.